The last of the newcomers have arrived at Alabama, so who's going to make the biggest impact of that bunch?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. We'll talk about Monarch Money in just a little bit, but I want to thank you every day for being here every day. Thank you, newbies, for being here today, and thanks everybody for making this your first listen every single day. You guys are the best. So, Jimmy, the newcomers are here, like Caleb Edwards, like London Simmons, Chuck McDonald, the two new tight ends that are transferring in, Dalton and Samarco, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 5 new guys have come on to campus, and they're ready to rock. Of that 5, who do you think makes the biggest splash this year?
I think it would be Brody Dalton, the oldest of those 5, very experienced, spent a lot of time playing at UAB and then especially at Troy. This is his 3rd school, his 3rd system at least. I think these older kids learn the scheme quicker, learn the playbook faster, particularly because he's already learned things in the past. That makes everything kind of easier to apply. He's also got significant playing experience in college football games. Plus, he's not going to be asked to do anything hugely significant in the sense that, I mean, I don't think Brody Dalton is going to play more snaps than, say, Josh Cuevas. I don't think he'll even play more snaps than Danny Lewis. But I do think Brody Dalton's going to play significant snaps with the ones as kind of the 3rd tight end or the 1st tight end off the bench as a blocky guy. So I think it'll be Dalton, the 3 high school players. And of course, I'm very high on all 3 in terms of in the long term, how good they'll be, particularly Chuck McDonald. Those 3, I think, is going to be a really good college football player. But learning the playbook late, getting here later, not going through spring in terms of the conditioning, just getting here, that's probably going to set them all back. Now, that said, you know who else was a summer arrival 1 year ago? Ryan Williams. He was even 17 years old. Didn't stop him or slow him down. But that's what we're going to discover all through the years is Ryan's basically the exception to every rule that's out there. He's just a phenomenal, one of one. So I'll go with the oldest kid of the 5, Brody Dalton, as the guy most likely to be impactful this fall.
I think the surprise answer could be Jeff Samarco because of the blocking, and that's why they bring him in. And I think he's the one guy that comes in and you're like, this is what you're getting. Caleb Edwards, huge, 6'7", 6'6", 250, 260, whatever he is. I've seen highlights on Twitter. He just bowls over people. Then Chuck McDonald, he put out that picture the other day where he's been working out and he's got like a 12-pack plus another 2 cans. He looks ridiculous. I think you could also say London Simmons. London Simmons would also be a dark horse, not as highly rated, but maybe could come in and just make a splash on the defensive line because we don't have necessarily any superstars on the line. I guess you could call LT Overton that to a degree. But other than that, I don't know that we have a superstar. So maybe London Simmons could come in and make a splash like that. But I think, like you said, the answer is probably Dalton. You're right. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's either Samarco, which is the least sexy of all the picks. I don't know actually how sexy he is in real life, but I'm saying as far as picks for this go, it's the least sexy. But the one that I think intrigues me the most is Chuck McDonald. A top 100 guy who's played against some incredible competition, played for a powerhouse high school. He's played against the best, and he looks like the best. So I think that's a guy that could come in and make some waves.
I think if the question for me was, who's the best of these 5 guys in terms of who's going to have the best career at Alabama and or beyond, my answer would be Chuck McDonald, even more so than Caleb Edwards. Although I think that would be kind of close for me. But I do like Chuck long term. I just think that with DeJohn Lee and Cam Calhoun kind of set to be the first DBs off the bench, even got Red Morgan moved to corner. I'm not sure how much opportunity Chuck McDonald's going to have. Whereas I think Brody Dalton was sort of, he was recruited to play right away. I mean, that's why they went to the portal to get him. Samarco in the same way. I think he's also recruited to play right away. He's just younger than Dalton and has played less college football than Dalton, though Samarco was at a Power 4 program in West Virginia. He's seen big time football, at least Big 12 football. He's just younger than Dalton, but he is a big kid, a block first guy, just like Dalton. And that's why they bought him in. So one thing about Samarco in terms of, where you could end up being proven right there, he's got one guy to beat out to get on the field, and that is Brody Dalton. I mean, they're sort of going to be competing for getting on the field first. Heck, they are both likely to play, in my opinion, but one of them's going to play more than the other. That'll be a really interesting competition this fall. It won't really impact, I don't think, the starting lineup or something's going to create a lot of headlines, but I do think Dalton and Samarco will sort of compete for snaps as that first tight end off the bench. Cuevas and Danny Lewis, though, I believe will end up playing the most snaps at tight end.
Speaking of Chuck McDonald, some Alabama defensive backs are getting a lot of love from one Oliver Davis. Now you ask, who's Oliver Davis? Why does that matter? He is the CEO of Sweet Feet Sports Performance. And you're like, what's Sweet Feet Sports Performance? Well, this is a guy who's worked with everybody who's anybody when it comes to big-time defensive backs. And he spent some sessions with Zabian Brown and DeJohn Lee and Cam Calhoun. I'm trying to work on our pronunciations here.
Yeah.
And he says, look, this bunch has a chance to be incredible. They could be a top 5 secondary, if not the best secondary in the country. I'm with him. I love the ceiling on these kids. Now, obviously, chemistry is going to be a big aspect of this, but I love Cam Calhoun's coming in. We both love DeJohn Lee. Zabian Brown obviously just kicked butt last year. Chuck McDonald coming in. We got some dudes back there, and this does have a chance to be a special secondary. And it's good to have that validated by somebody who's worked with the best, like Pat Surtain and Terrion Arnold.
I think Alabama is so good at DB right now, Luke. It's not just the 5 starters, although that 5 starters they're a contender to be one of the better DB groups in the country. I'm not saying they are, but I think they're a contender. They're in that top group of DBs in the country. But what's so exciting for Alabama fans is it's not just those 5 projected starters. It's guys off the bench that are extremely promising, like DeJohn Lee, like Cam Calhoun, here's a guy that I think is going to be a little splashy, Dre Kirkpatrick. Zay Mincy as the 3rd safety looks fantastic. He's going to have a great career. Another true freshman that was really splashy this spring is Ivan Taylor. I think he's a guy that you can't keep off the field. But yeah, Alabama's DB group is great. That article that was on BOL, about the training in Atlanta. What caught my eye and Potter's story is the fact that Jordan Edmonds is already there. I mean, that's the guy that's he's a kid committed to Alabama, still has a senior year of high school football to play. These kids that are getting that level of high level training while they're still in school, they show up ready. I mean, that and hey, a shout out not just to Jordan Edmonds, although he deserves it. We'll lump him in with this group. When we were coming along, Luke, back in the Stone Age, May was the off month for the players. That was the one month of the year they could be completely away from football. They'd go home to their families, and be honest, most of them would work jobs. They would find jobs to work in the month of May because it was the only month of the year they could work and make money. And most of them would do that at home. So now fast forward to 2025. Now all these guys are paid. They've got their own money. So what do they do during the month of May? They spend their own money on additional training when they don't have to. No one's requiring them to do this. And it's their own money. That Oliver guy in Atlanta, who's a DB guru, he doesn't work for free. I mean, he's a professional football trainer and coach, and he charges money for this valuable service he provides to them, and our players spend their NIL money on it, and they're really to be lauded for their drive and ambition. It's just such an opposite thing of what happened all during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, where, hey, May was their month of going home to work and make some beer money.
You know, that's called investing in yourself. And I've got another way that you can invest in yourself coming up right now. That's Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, hey, where'd all my money go? I'm not using it at sweet feet. I'm just blowing it on stuff I don't need. Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. I can't stop doing that. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. You know, managing your money is great, but you want wealth. That's just the way this works. I listen to Dave Ramsey too. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off the first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnCollege. All one word, code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year at monarchmoney.com. Jimmy Stein's world-famous roster countdown rocks on with number 67, I believe it is. Jimmy,
66. Yeah, 66.
66?
66 days.
Okay. Better than I thought.
66 days till the start of fall camp, and the first preseason NFL game is that night, by the way. And, you know, I'm a little surprised to him putting here at 66 because if I'd have guessed a few months ago, this guy would be a little higher. But at 66, we have Casey Poe, an offensive lineman that we're super high on out of high school. Ooh. Still am very high on Casey Poe. His issue in terms of why he's here is he's missed a lot of time. He missed a lot of time this spring. He actually missed time in the fall. He's just been banged up. It's nothing of huge significance in terms of, you know, a long-term problem. It's just, you know, these young freshmen, when they're not in the weight room, when they're not on the field working, they can fall behind, you know, the other guys. And this is the valuable developmental time. And I think Casey's just missed a little bit. The good news is when he's been out there, he's cross-trained. He's played some on the interior. He's played some at tackle. But he hasn't been healthy the whole time. And I think that's kind of set him back in his development just a bit. So I don't know that we'll see a lot of Casey Poe this fall. I wouldn't guess that he will be with the twos. Really, on Alabama's offensive line, the ones play a ton of snaps. The twos play quite a bit, more than they did under Saban. But if you're with the threes, the third group, you're either going to redshirt or not play a lot. And Casey, of course, redshirt this past fall. He's full gump, just a little behind, I think, just from missing a little bit of time. I'm still super high on what Casey Poe can be. Besides myself with normal offensive linemen, normal development time in the SEC, I don't really get concerned about these guys till year 3. Like, where are they at year 3? This guy's just starting year 2. So whatever happens this fall with him, I'm not going to be overly concerned. I think the time for him to really make a move is probably next spring, the start of year 3 for him. And in that sense, I think he's right on track. But he's down here at 66 because I don't anticipate him being with that second group. I think that's going to be largely, you know, Vandemark, Michael Carroll, Jackson Lloyd, Olaus, Alanine, who made a major move this spring. Olaus will be with the twos for sure. Maybe even Rock Montgomery and a guy that we'll be talking about in coming days that I think is interesting that I really had a hard time ranking, and that's Will Sanders. But we'll be talking about him in a couple of days as well. All these offensive linemen that are kind of down here with this third group, I've kind of lumped together. But very high on Casey Poe in the long term. I think he's going to be really good. I just wouldn't expect a ton, you know, too soon.
Yeah, and it should be noted, you snuck this in there, but he is full on gump. He had a tweet the other day where I think he was tweeting at some recruits saying, hey, if you want to come be developed by the best, come to Alabama. That's the kind of thing I want to see more of. Because number one, I like that you do that because it makes me feel like you're going to be here, right?
Yep.
Because it would be weird if you said, be sure to come here and get developed because I'm headed to another school, so I got a spot over here. You know,
Right.
I feel like he's here for the long haul, and I like that he's got an affinity for the university and appreciates what is being done for him, because in this era of we've got to pay the players, we've been, just raking them over the coals and all this other stuff for years, and now they deserve what they get. It's nice to see that there's still some players that are like, hey, look, this is also sort of a golden opportunity for us. Even if I don't make a ton in NIL, I'm getting a free ride. I get all the meals I want. I'm a superstar on campus just because I play for the University of Alabama, and I will always have that on my resume. There is something to be said for that. I'm not, again, this isn't like me taking a shot at the players are getting paid. I'm just saying is now they're getting paid and they have that stuff. And it's good to see that somebody's still appreciating the old school stuff.
Yeah, Tim Keenan on there was a special. I hope everybody was able to see it. There was a special on SEC Network, All Access Alabama this week. Had a lot of great interviews with this upcoming team that'll be out there this fall. And something Luke just said reminded me of something Tim Keenan said on the show. Tim Keenan said he's really appreciative of his own patience. He said it wasn't too long ago. He said, I was the worst defensive tackle. I was fat. I was 380 pounds. I was the worst defensive lineman. I was on the scout team, and there didn't appear to be a lot of light at the end of the tunnel for me. He goes, now look at me. I'm the highest graded defensive lineman returning from last year's team. He's going to be on some all-star lists. He's one of the better nose guards in college football. He attributes patience. I was just patient. I was patient, and I kept working hard, and it finally came for me. That same thing will happen for Casey Poe. You just keep working at it. Keep working on off the field stuff, and by that I mean the strength and conditioning. It's big boy football in the SEC. Hey, the SEC is difficult enough, but down in the trenches, I mean that's grown man stuff going on down there, and you're going up against 23-year-olds that have been in the strength and conditioning programs for 4 and 5 years. It's tough for these 18 and 19-year-olds to compete with that. So he'll get there, and I'm very optimistic. One last thing I want to say about Casey Poe, I didn't mention before. We mentioned this with other players, and I just mentioned Olas is a guy like this. The kids with positional versatility are very valuable, because if you can prove, hey, I can play some tackle, I can play guard, I can even snap the ball. If you can prove that, now you're coming up on a spring, for instance, where you're like, we're good at tackle, but we have some openings inside. You can play. I want to play inside. That's where the opportunities are. Or the opposite. Like, well, we're kind of short on tackles. Casey Poe's a guy that can, hey, I want to play tackles. That positional versatility is likely to suit him really well when it comes time to compete for a job. I just think this fall, we all sort of know what the offensive line is going to be. I do think there'll be some interesting battles to see, okay, who fills out the two group. Because some of them are slam dunks. Like if Vandermark's not starting, he's a slam dunk. Olas is a slam dunk. Jackson Lloyd, I think, showed up kind of like even better than they thought, which is saying a lot for a 5-star. I think he's a slam dunk to be a 2. But that leaves still a couple of 2 jobs out there. Like and Casey Poe's can be competing for that with Rott Montgomery, with Will Sanders, with Big Mike Carroll, who I think is another freshman who's going to be in the mix quickly. So we'll see. I'm just kind of predicting, to be realistic, that he's a 3 because he's missed some time. And if so, probably won't see a ton of him. Doesn't mean I'm not super high on him as a guy that will be competing to be for a spot with the ones, as soon as next spring.
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has a burr under his saddle, and the baseball team is headed to Hattiesburg. Let's talk about those two things. So Greg Sankey, this is from SEC Media Session in Destin. This is a quote. I don't need lectures from others about the good of the game or coordinating press releases about the good of the game. He's referencing that the Big 12 and the ACC releases in wake of seeding vote last week. That's according to Pete Thamel. I just get the feeling more and more the SEC is like, guys, we're tired of playing footsie with y'all. Let's quit pretending like everybody's the same here. And I'm on board with it because we've known it for years. I listen to Chris Childers on Sirius XM, and he's like a huge champion of the little guy, right? Let's just give them a chance. But they're not as good, and they don't do the same thing. It's almost a different sport. It doesn't mean they can't slip up and beat a big guy every now and again. That's not what I'm saying. Every now and again they can. But if you were to put Boise State in the SEC, they'd get their brains beat in often. Often. Now, does that mean they won't beat Tennessee sometime, or they couldn't come down to Atlanta and beat Georgia like they've done in the past? Of course they could. But Mississippi State does that already. And I'm pretty sure I'd be willing to bet Mississippi State's athletic budget is bigger than Boise State's.
It definitely is because of the fact that they're in the SEC and Boise's not. Sankey's in what everybody needs to remember, and it's going to be all in the news this week. SEC spring meetings start, basically today, and they'll be going on all week in Destin. And these meetings are more important than they've probably ever been before because the literal future of college football is being decided by people like Greg Sankey, who may be the most powerful person in college football. It's certainly not the NCAA president. It's probably more like Greg Sankey and the guy running the Big Ten, Tony whatever. But Sankey, Tony Petito, I think is his name. So Sankey, the thing about what we have to remember about him is he's not the face of college football. He doesn't have to act in the best interest of college football. His job is to act in the best interest of the SEC. So he's going to propose things and do things and bully his way best he can to make sure that his teams, his league, the presidents that he works for, that those schools are protected. And unfortunately, we have reached the point, Josh Pate speaks about this all the time and does such a great job talking about this issue alone, is that while Greg Sankey and Tony Petito are going to be looking out for their leagues, and the Big 12 and the ACC are looking out for their leagues, and the Group of Five thing, they're looking out for their leagues, no one's looking out in the best interest of college football. No one out there is saying, hey, this is what's best for college football. And that's okay in the sense it's not Sankey's job to do that. His job's the SEC and protecting them. And Luke's right. I mean, I think we are treading towards dangerous waters because it's not best for college football for the SEC and the Big Ten to pick up their ball and go home and say, we're going to do our own thing. In fact, it would destroy, in my opinion, college football and turn college football into completely something else. Now, that something else may be fun. It may be cool, but it would destroy the college football that we've always known. I mean, in terms of if the SEC and Big Ten are just simply playing themselves and it's the AFC and the NFC and then the winners play in the Super Bowl. I mean, I do think that's, if they don't get their way, that's very likely to happen. And to be honest, I mean, I'm for Alabama. I'm for the SEC, but I don't want college football to be ruined in that way. I want there to be multiple power conferences and multiple smaller conferences, and we have a system that resembles something that we've gotten used to. Having Alabama play only SEC and Big Ten teams while everybody else does something else. Boy, talk about the NFL light. I'm not even sure it'd be the NFL light. I think it'd just kind of be NFL junior, SEC and Big Ten did that.
I wouldn't love that. I'd be okay if there were 48 to 64 teams or whatever it is, somewhere in there, and that's all there was. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I mean, again, and I'm not saying I don't want the kids at these schools to never get scholarships or anything like that. I mean, whatever. But I'm going to push back on something you said a little bit. You say destroy college football. I think we've been saying that destroy college football for the last few years about several scenarios, like the transfer portal and players getting paid. It has changed. And yes, I'm a little irritated. I think you are. I think most everybody is. At the same time, we're watching it at record levels.
Oh, yeah.
And the interest is still there. You and I still do this podcast.
I don't think nothing's ruined college football yet. And I don't think I've thought that any of these previous things would ruin college football. I do think the SEC and the Big Ten breaking away and doing their own thing would it would not ruin college football. It would just
fundamentally
change it to something that doesn't really resemble what we've all grown up with.
Fair. Now, I'll say this. We keep saying Big Ten and SEC break away. I think it also needs, and then you say, oh my God, that's only what I mean. Does the Big Ten have 18 teams? They have 18. We got 16, so
it'd be 34.
That's 34. Notre Dame's going to be in there. Clemson's going to be in there. Florida State's going to be somewhere. Miami's going to be somewhere.
Not if the SEC and Big Ten break off.
You're right, but what would happen is those teams would find a way in. I promise you, Notre Dame ain't getting left out of this thing.
Well, what would happen is the remaining power things, they're going to do their own thing, and they're going to have their own championship, and they're going to try to convince the Associated Press to name their champion the true champion.
They could do that, but nobody on earth, that is like Central Florida claiming the 2017 title. There's nobody on God's green earth who really believes that, except a couple of Central Florida people and a couple of Auburn people because they don't want Alabama to have the title.
Sure, but Central Florida's not Notre Dame or Clemson or Florida State.
But I'm going to say again, Notre Dame ain't going to be left out. Now, Florida State, I don't know. But Notre Dame ain't getting left out of a college football. They'll find a way to weasel their in somewhere. I mean, I promise you.
Hopefully none of this will happen. And what I'm hoping happens, even though so many people hate it, what I'm hoping happens is the SEC and Big Ten get their way, and we have this new 16-team playoff where the SEC and Big Ten are awarded automatic spots, enough to make them happy, with the opportunity to maybe add one or two through a wild card, so they could have even more than 4 AQ spots. I think it'll pass, but gosh, so many people are upset about it that aren't the SEC and Big Ten, and I get why. I get why they're upset about it. I also get why the SEC and the Big Ten want it this way.
Well, I mean, let me tell you something. I mean, they can be upset about it. That's fine. But, I mean, you can't dispute the numbers. And people just saying, well, you know, if you don't win your conference championship, you shouldn't get in. You remember that argument for the longest time? I was like, all conferences aren't created equal.
That's right.
I mean, that's what's crazy about this. If all conferences were equal, okay, but they're not. So I'll tell you the truth. From this Bama's point of view, 4 SEC locks and 4 Big Ten locks ain't enough. Yeah, out of 16 teams, that's only half the field. Now that I know you could get more with the at-larges, but then you think, okay, you got to take a Big 12, and it's almost like we got to take a Big 12. It's like if you had a date with somebody that was really good looking, and they had a really chunky, nerdy, stinky brother or sister, and she's like, I can go with you, but I got to bring my brother or sister with me, and you're like, okay, that's the Big 12.
That happened in The Hangover.
It happened. I was usually the stinky brother. That's the problem with me. All right. So let's talk about Bama baseball going to Hattiesburg. So Southern Miss, I think, is the 16 seed, right? So they were the last of the regional hosts, right?
I think that's exactly correct. So Alabama obviously missed hosting a regional by 1 spot. You know, it's outrageous that Alabama's not hosting this regional.
They just didn't want to give it.
They just didn't want to give the SEC yet another, and they're not going to admit that out loud. But that's exactly what happened. I mean, Alabama's RPI. They're the only top 16 team that didn't get to host. Alabama. Southern Miss is 19 in the RPI. And Alabama beat Southern Miss head-to-head earlier in the season. So there's no justification for Southern. Alabama won more quad 1 games than Southern Miss played.
That's just stupid.
So now, why do they do this? Because the SEC's hosting so much. As a matter of fact, we're just about when Luke just said all conferences aren't created equal. Of the 8 top seeds, all teams favored to host a super regional and go to the College World Series, 6 of the 8 are from the SEC, including the top 4. That's all the proof you need that, you know, sometimes these conferences aren't all equal. Now, maybe the SEC is a bit overrated, but if the SEC is overrated, okay, let's say the SEC is actually only 80% as good as we think it is. It's still monstrously better at 80% than any other league. And especially when it comes to baseball. And baseball and softball are kind of similar in that way now, as 5 of the 8 teams playing in the Women's College World Series, 5 of those 8 are SEC teams. We're going to have something really similar in Omaha. But hey, let's just worry about this. Alabama, go beat Southern Miss. Don't complain about not hosting. Go beat Southern Miss again. Go beat them. Also, Miami of Florida, and they're not bad for a 3 seed. As we know, Miami's a power baseball program. Interesting that Alabama third baseman Jason Torres is a Miami transfer, so we'll get a good scouting report. Jason played with those guys just last year. I'm assuming Riley Quick is going to pitch on Friday, which will be interesting against Miami, and then hopefully you move on and most likely play Southern Miss on Saturday. But go beat Southern Miss. Don't leave the Hattiesburg Regional still complaining that you didn't get to host.
Yeah, don't do that.
Go beat Southern Miss.
And we're not playing in Boise. We're playing in Hattiesburg. It's about 2.5 hours away. It's not a big deal. So just go down there and take care of business. I find it interesting. So Alabama, if they were to move on from this regional, I guess they'd play the Vandy.
Really, okay. number 1 overall seed.
Fine, but I'm okay with this. Let me tell you why. Alabama should have beaten Vandy. Should have beaten Vandy 2 or 3. They had them dead to rights in the final game, and I would make the argument that Vandy's only the number 1 seed because that win over Alabama catapulted them into a new stratosphere of momentum. And
Alabama's got a chance to win those games. Put it this way, I think Alabama baseball's got a better chance to beat Vandy and Nashville than the softball team had to beat Oklahoma and Norman. And ironically, Oklahoma's not even number 1 seed overall, but Vanderbilt is. But that Oklahoma team, it's just also, boy, Alabama baseball and softball had such similar seasons. And that's why they end up potentially in similar situations in the super regional that you make it that far, which is awesome. But then you're playing on the road against such a highly ranked team. But I think Alabama baseball would have a shot. They'd have a puncher's chance in Nashville against Vandy. But you got to take care of business first, and that's Miami and Southern Miss. And as much as we say Alabama deserves to host, those are 2 good baseball teams. Southern Miss is the number 19 team in the country per RPI. They're a good team. Clearly, they've also won 18 games in a row. That's hard to do in any league.
Yeah, but you know what that means. They're due.
They're due.
That's going to do it for today's pod. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.